And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Buck with you. Buck, first of all, man, it's been a minute. It's great to see you, dude.
No, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since it's been a two-man show when it's you and I. So this is great, man. We get a chance to kind of empty the bucket a little bit, have some thoughts on a bunch of different things that I haven't had a chance to run by you. So it should be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some notes from you too on the East West on a couple guys that popped down there. So we'll do that a little bit later on in the show. I want to start though with something that I read this morning, and it echoed what I had heard at the Senior Bowl. Is everybody's always talking and there's whispers and all this kind of stuff. But Joe Burrow's making the rounds today and said, "Look, I think we all want to stay together, and that's with T. Higgins and Gesicki as free agents, including getting a deal done that they need to get done, with Jamar Chase." So that was something I had heard a while back when I was talking about T. Higgins with the team, and hey, would this make sense for you guys? Like, T. Higgins ain't going anywhere. He's like, look. He got the same agent. They ended up getting together. Him and Jamar have the same representation now because they want to stay together in Cincinnati. And Cincinnati has the cap room to do it.
Mm-hmm. So it's funny that you said I was with Donald Penn doing some stuff. And Donald Penn serves the same representation as Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And he told me that they were all together. Yeah. And so I thought that was interesting because when you have guys that play the same position on the same team, there's no hidden negotiation. Like everyone knows exactly what is being done. And if you're going to split the baby, as they would say, like you now know how to make it equitable for both parties, because as an agent, you want to make sure that both of your guys are happy. And also, if they share representation, they probably have a good relationship anyway. And they want to make sure that their fellow person is taken care of. But they also want to make sure they get fair market value. That is something that the Cincinnati Bengals will have to negotiate. But let's be real when it comes to this thing about Cincinnati and what they could do. You and I, and you really have been kind of leading this thought. You've always said that I would rather be great on one side of the ball and figure it out on the other side of the ball. Yeah. And so if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, the one thing that we know, despite all their issues last year, they were good enough to get into the postseason, but they got off to a slow start. But offensively, there are few teams that can match up with what they have on the offense when you talk about Higgins, Chase, Burrow, even if you throw Gesicki in there. I would say that they were better when they had a marquee running back in place with Joe Mixon, but that's something that they can find or whatever. Chase Brown is serviceable, but they could get an upgrade at that spot. But yeah, offensively, they're playoff ready. Now it's about finding a defense that's good enough to get you there. Not that you have to be a top 10 defense, but a middle of the pack defense that plays a certain way. I would say if they look towards the Kansas City Chiefs, that might be a way to look at how they do it, because before Kansas City loaded up on defense, Steve Spagnuolo was a big play, splash play defensive coordinator. He's playing for a big play, a turnover, a stop to throw you off your rhythm to make you kick three, while they had the confidence that their offense were always going to put up 7. So yeah, I like the plan. I like the approach of you to Cincinnati Bengals, because in that division, you're going to have to be able to outscore people, because it's going to be hard to get into a rock'em sock'em robot match with the Steelers, the Ravens, those teams. I don't know if you're going to beat them the way that they try and play.
Yeah, and I think it also brings up a bigger point as well that, man, if you're hoping that free agency is going to solve all your problems nowadays, man, guys just aren't getting there. You're just not going to get guys to the market. And you look at you look at the receiver class and this free agency group, not great. The draft class at receiver position is not great. It was one of the first years I can ever remember where, man, that's not a good year to need a receiver. Normally you find one under a flat rock.
Yeah, no, it's different. And I mean, we went through this run. DJ had to be about a 7-8 year run of wide receivers at the top of the board that we're just excited about. I mean, 4 to 5 receivers coming off the board in the first round. And they not only came there, the hit rate was so great on these top receivers. There was only a handful of guys that didn't live up to pre-draft expectations. Now we've kind of hit that lull and a plateau where if you haven't developed and groomed your guys for significant minutes or a bigger role, it's going to be hard to find that guy on the streets. That's why the developmental model is so great. It's also why it's so interesting to see the LA Rams put Cooper Kupp on the market, because he's the embodiment of the developmental process where you take someone in the third, he becomes an all-world playmaker. you get him. And then as he's descending, you have another one that you can put there. The money prohibits it, but in a perfect world, as he's coming down and Puka's going up, you find a way to keep both of them because they are interchangeable weapons.
Yeah, we haven't been together on that. So what's your take on this situation there with Cooper Kupp? Do you think somebody would take on the contract and actually make that trade?
Well, I think the injuries the last couple of years. So the last 3 years, he's only played in 33 games. The money is significant. I think you're talking about 26 or 27 on like a cap
1 year
hit.
guarantee. I think it's only like $5 million guarantee, but it's the next year there's none guarantee. But it's a big number overall.
Yeah, so just a big number because he signed that 3-year, $80 million extension. But here's what there's so many teams that he would be a perfect fit for. I think about the Pittsburgh Steelers and how they may need some maturity in that wide receiver room, what he could do for them, the dependability and reliability that he would give them. I think he fits the brand and the culture that they have. I could see him going to Kansas City, much like they used Andre Hopkins and Juju Smith-Schuster. I would say that Cooper Kupp is a better player at this stage of his career than those guys are. Like what he could be as a security blanket. A team like the Raiders that doesn't have a true number one, but needs someone to pair up with a Brock Bowers, a mature player. Pete Carroll has seen him and those things. There's a place for him to be able to get down and play. I'm just surprised it won't be in LA.
Yeah, he's very synonymous with the success they've had there, including just a Super Bowl where he took over the game with Matthew Stafford when everybody knew where it was going and they couldn't stop him. I mean, that was
unbelievable, right?
A big time performance by Cooper Kupp in that ballgame. Another item that haven't had a chance to catch up on. We've talked about it on here. I think we talked about it with Rhett, but I always love getting your perspective on it. Just Myles Garrett. I know it's prohibitive from a salary cap standpoint. It's going to be tricky for Cleveland if they were to do that. And maybe that's why they've just come flat out and said that they won't do it. But your thoughts on him asking for it, and do you think he eventually gets what he wants?
I felt like when I first heard about it, one, I was surprised, but two, you brought this up on multiple occasions on the podcast. I was like, man, did DJ know something about this Myles Garrett thing coming down the pipe? Because I was like, he has brought this up about like, hey, maybe you should get rid of him. This is a perfect time. I'll say this. I understand, like, because he used Andrew Berry's words against him. Like, no, I didn't want to take a straight path from Cleveland to Canton. I want to go and win some Super Bowls and those things. And he's a foundational piece. When we talk about the marquee pieces that you have to have in a championship puzzle, like you look for a dominant pass rusher. And what it shows is like, man, one wrong move and a bad move that they made with Deshaun Watson, we have to call it what it is. Like, it was a bad move. It has completely not only wrecked their salary cap, but I would say it probably wrecked the chemistry in the locker room when you kind of hear the buzz and the lay of the land. How can they fix that? Like, he's not in the building now because of the injury. Is there a way that you can go back to Myles Garrett and find a way to get him to kind of recommit to being with the Cleveland Browns? Normally, I would say money kind of fixes all things. I'm looking at his deal. He has 2 years left on his deal, 5-year, $125 that he signed. Joey Bosa is now the guy that you're chasing at $34 million annually. Is there a way to sweeten the pot a little bit to kind of get him to buy in and recommit? I would be reluctant to get rid of someone who has 4 straight seasons with 14 sacks. I'd be reluctant to get rid of a 4-time All-Pro. Even though he's 30, he hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. It would be hard for me to part ways with him. And even when we've done this in the past, like Khalil Mack is the comp that you would do, like the Raiders got back two number ones and a 3 and some other stuff, they still were never able to replace the player. Yeah. It is hard to replace a player like that. If I'm Cleveland, yeah, it's a non-starter for me.
I think the challenge is, but when the Khalil Mack trade happened, they still had Carr, right? So they had who they had as their quarterback they were committed to and comfortable with. Mm-hmm. I think what happens, Buck, is when you don't have the quarterback, you start getting to the point where you're like, okay, we've got this Hall of Fame defensive end, we can't win. So we got to do whatever we got to do to figure out a way to get the quarterback. And I think the Browns quarterback of the future is not going to be acquired this year. I think he's in 26 or 27, like 1 or 2 years down the line. So the argument on the other side of it is, man, let's just amass as many resources as we possibly can in 26 and 27 so we can strike when we get an opportunity to get the quarterback, because even with the Hall of Fame player like that, if we don't have a quarterback, we're going to have a hard time winning in this league. And I also think the AFC thing is real, man. Like there's a that's a shadow. When you got a shadow of Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and
And
CJ
Josh Allen.
Stroud and
And
Justin Herbert, Josh Allen. I mean, Buck, that's you sitting there like, man, I'm bringing a knife to a gunfight here. Like I don't want to be in the business of trading, first ballot Hall of Fame players, cornerstone players. But man, how are we ever going to get over that mountain with all those quarterbacks with what we're bringing to the table?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you look at it, right? Because if you look at it in the rear view where you just are coming off the 3-14 year, I could see that. But the year before they were a playoff team, right? Like they were in the mix. Joe Flacco had led them and put them in a position where they could do some things. Is there a way that you can patchwork that part but fortify the defense? Because I'll say this, the defense didn't play to the level that they played previously. And it's hard when you're not getting the offensive support. I just wondered when you're Kevin Stefanski, because Kevin Stefanski gave up the play calling. Ken Dorsey came in. Ken Dorsey came in specifically to help Deshaun Watson. Dorsey's out. Stefanski's back as the play caller. Can he say, like, hold on, let's just reset and see if we can run this back? Because Stefanski, I think, two-time coach of the year, got them to 2 playoff appearances without having the marquee. He did it with Baker Mayfield. He did it with Joe Flacco and others. Why not pause and see? I know like the money is $20 million this year, $25 million the following year. I don't know, man. I hate giving up good players just for like what could be behind door number 2 and 3.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, again, this is as we go around in circles on this one, but it's also, what is it? The definition of insanity, right? Is to keep doing the same thing and expect different results. Like, nope, we're going to do it this year with our defense. Defense is going to take us. We don't need a quarterback.
It's funny. So then I'm saying, so I'm using the Khalil Mack deal as whatever. So if you are able to get 2 number ones, right? So you get another number 1 this year, a number 1 next year.
I wouldn't even ask for another number 1 this year. I want all my picks in 26 and 27, all of them. I don't want any extra picks in this draft. I don't. I mean, if I'm them, I'm sitting there saying my ultimate goal is to get the quarterback, and I don't love my options in this draft. So load me up with 26 and 27 picks.
So here's the crazy thing, right? Like, so we're avid college football fans, and we love the draft. DJ, who's the quarterback on the horizon that we're pining for? Normally there would be buzz over a quarterback or whatever. Like, are we buzzing over Arch Manning, even though we've only seen that much of him? Like, I'm trying to figure out who is the guy that we begin to speculate on.
There's some guys with loud tools, and I'll give you Arch, who we just seen a little bit of, but you're talking about the prototypical stuff that he has. The kid at South Carolina is outstanding. He is fun. Like he's one that I've kind of keeping an eye on. I haven't seen a ton. What I've seen, I was like, okay. And I think he's a redshirt sophomore next year, so I think he'd be draft eligible. But again, 26 or 27. Klubnik has shown some good things at Clemson. Drew Allers had his moments at Penn State, who's another prototypical big, strong dude. Now he's keep getting better. But what I'm saying is there's some prototypes out there, whereas I feel like we're kind of trying and we're hoping and wishing a little bit with this year's group.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the conviction. And as we would say, a good front office, like your college scouting director, your area scouts have bird dog some guys, like if you're worth a salt, you've already taken a look not only at this class, but you looked ahead to see who's coming down the pipeline. And so if we're talking about like true franchise quarterbacks on the horizon, yeah, if you can have that conversation with ownership as to why it makes sense, it can go. I mean, look, I rule out nothing. Coming off a weekend in which we saw Luka Doncic traded, and he's in his prime, one of the best players in the NBA at 25 years of age. Anybody can be got. So that's the world we're living in now when it comes to sports. The things that used to be the norm are no longer the norm when it comes to marquee players.
All right, Buck, before we get to some college guys, one last pro topic here. I was just looking at this, thinking about this Super Bowl with Vic Fangio calling the defense for the Eagles and Spags once again calling the defense for the Kansas City Chiefs. I started thinking about the value of having that wisdom in that game on the defensive side of the ball. And I thought, let me go back and look at some of these. So if you look at the last winners, Kansas City, they won last year with Spags, won the year before with Spags. Then you had the Rams that won that one. That was why am I drawing a blank here? That was who was a DC? No, not on that one, not on the most recent one. It was Raheem. Wasn't it Raheem?
Yeah, Raheem is the one that won it. He was
Yeah,
the coordinator
that
one.
was
He's
this
been in the
last
league
year.
for a long time. Yeah.
Yep, and so that was Raheem, and then Raheem had been around for a long
Been
time.
around the block a few times. Yeah.
Yes, and then you go back, Chiefs again, Spags. Then you get the Belichick with the Patriots. Then you get Schwartz with the Eagles, Belichick with the Patriots, Wade Phillips with the Broncos, Belichick, and then you get Pete Carroll. It's like, holy cow, like you go all the way back, and it's there's a lot of value in having a guy who's been around the block a few times and had some experiences and understands how to coach in that game.
Well, I think so, DJ. It's a game that until you're in it, you don't really know what all goes into it in terms of not only the preparation, but how different it is than any other game that you've been in. People can talk about the 2 weeks that you normally had to prepare, but it's not only the 2 weeks that you had to prepare where you don't want to like overload your players with a bunch of stuff, but it's managing all of the distractions that comes with it. And then when it comes to the game, it's the game that I would say has the biggest emotional swings in any game that you're ever coaching because of the finality of it and because of the stakes that are on the line. The big plays are magnified to a higher degree. So your calls have more significance than they've ever had. So how can you calm yourself down and not become distracted by the potential outcomes and really focus on the process to putting your team in the best thing? I believe it takes experience in having done that to be comfortable in that environment, which is why Steve Spagnuolo is so comfortable in the environment, which is why some of these other guys have been comfortable. When you've done it a few times, and Spags has done it, my gosh, how many times? Like twice with the Giants, and this would be the
Yeah.
fifth time with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
7 times you've been in the game. And then I think he's been in the game before with the Eagles as an assistant with Jim Johnson. I mean, the more you're in the game, the more the game slows down and you understand how to major on the majors and not worry about all the other stuff.
Yeah, I went back one extra year or two, and that was the Ravens. That was Dean Pease, who'd been around forever when they won
Yeah.
it. It's just kind of funny that like think about all these we have so many young coordinators, right? And it's like, well, the guys who are in these games that win it, they're calm and comfortable. They've been in these types of situations before. And I was thinking about this with Fangio, and there's so many articles written in the Super Bowl, so I'm sure this has been written, but I haven't seen it. But I was thinking of the irony. I believe they're practicing at the Saints facility, right? The
Oh,
Eagles.
he's old school. Yeah.
I mean, you think about that. He's walking in there. You think you want some confidence? How about just walking in and seeing all the statues and of all the dudes you coached at the Dome Patrol back in the day, man? All those dudes. He's been around forever. Vic has been around forever.
He has been around forever. And I do believe, and it's easier maybe for people to buy into the experienced defensive coordinator where you want kind of like the young hotshot offensive mind and those things. But I mean, there is something to experience and expertise and wisdom and being able to have seen a lot and had to deal with a lot and having an encyclopedia of knowledge when you're dealing with stuff. So you're able to recall that and be like, oh, I remember this back in the 80s. They used to run this. We used to have this answer and that answer or whatever. And let's think about what some of the things that we've seen in Super Bowls that have taken place. Bill Belichick using an old school defense against the Rams to stymie the Rams in like a 13-10 win to get it done. Being able to see what Wade Phillips was able to throw out to kind of mess up Cam Newton in Super Bowl 50. Like we have seen these old guys throw nice knuckleballs at the opposition.
Remember the Giants taking the ends and putting them in over the guards and
I mean,
with
just
bags
like
and
Patriots.
Just
Just doing different stuff because man, every time, every year, you just learn so much and you're able to apply that. There's something to watch. And this year we actually get the luxury of watching 2 experienced defensive coordinators go back and forth and how they're going to navigate it. I would say the difference with Fangio is he has a younger team, but to me, that's the quality of the coaching because the coach, how can you get younger players to buy into maybe something that is complex? We saw Spags do it a couple years ago with the Kansas City Chiefs when they had all those young hoppers running around on defense.
First and second
and
year,
they played
secondary
well.
guys.
I mean, so it's the same thing. To me, there is something about that, which is, look, man, maybe that's why we saw a little bit of a renaissance with Pete Carroll and some of the older guys getting significant opportunities.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. All right, Buck. We are going to switch gears, though, real quick. Going to get into some college stuff here because it's time for Hot or Not, brought to you by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Haven't had a chance to catch up with you since East West, and I know talking to some other buddies that had made the trek from East West to Senior. Heard some names of some guys who popped, but just your experience down there. Can you give me a couple dudes that I need to put towards the top of the list? I need to get watched.
Well, guys that you want to watch, and obviously we started at quarterback. Everyone to talk about Shadur Sanders, but Shadur Sanders didn't work out. He just interviewed. Cal McCord was the guy. Cal McCord from Syracuse, who had transferred from Ohio State, has a phenomenal final season in Syracuse. Like, he lit it up during practices. What you saw was a guy who came out as a 4-star, 5-star quarterback. You saw the tools, you saw the talent, You saw the touch, timing, anticipation. You saw him make big boy throws. And what you also saw was someone who you could squint and close your eyes and see a top 100 player. In a game in which we've seen Brock Purdy and Aiden O'Connell use that game to step up, Cal McCord didn't play in the game, but the week of practices should make him a very interesting guy as like a mid-round selection.
Yeah.
I would say DJ stand on offense at running back. Todd Brooks from Texas Tech was someone that kind of stood out. 5'9", 230 pounds. Stop-start quickness, burst, can kind of run it like a pounder, but has some speed to get to the outside. Like, he was interesting. There were some other guys that you liked on offense. There was a bunch of wide receivers, but like Arande Gatson, son of Arande Gatson, played for us, stood out at tight end, those things. But I would say the best players were on the defense side of the ball. And Kansas cornerback Kobe Bryant was someone that they talked about. And it's funny, Kobe Bryant, if he had more size on him, you would really like him. But he's only 175 pounds, and so people worry about the Emmanuel Forbes thing. But what I saw is someone who could do some of the Jalen Ramsey, the physical stuff or whatever. You just worry about his size. And then I would say up front, Jordan Phillips from Maryland.
Yeah, that's the one that I heard the most about the whole week.
He's the guy, man. Like, he's the guy, 320 pounds. I got a chance to stand with Mike Loxley, like, the entire practice day, and he just talked about the dude is wired right, great effort, great motor, yes sir, no sir type, just loves ball. And when you saw him, man, you just don't see guys built like that. Like, he was a well put together 320 pounds. He was playing the 3 technique, but you could see him being a very active nose tackle if you had to use him there. He was just really good, man. Really good with his hands, all of that. He was outstanding the entire week.
Yep, that was a name that just came up a bunch of times out of there. The guys said, "Oh yeah, okay, you need to watch him. He's a really, really good football player." I heard just through the grapevine that the interviews with Shadur went well. Everybody that I talked to that had visited with him enjoyed their time with him. So I mean, obviously, he didn't do anything at the game, which I don't think anybody anticipated he would. But they did. They said they got the vibe from visiting with him as somebody that really, really loves football.
Yeah, no. So it was interesting, right? And maybe this is just a coach putting chum in the water. I thought about it. Brian Callahan, who had coached Joe Burrow doing Cincinnati, made loose comparisons between Shadur Sanders and Joe Burrow. And if you want to read about it, there's an article on ESPN. Teron Davenport kind of outlines what Brian Callahan said. But in summation, he basically said, like, look, he's a touch, timing, and anticipation quarterback. And much like Joe Burrow, who may not have the strongest arm, when you have touch, timing, and anticipation, it allows you to kind of mask some of those deficiencies. And he basically alluded to the fact that, like Burrow, he can be a point guard in the right system where if you're just like, hey, ball out, he can play when it comes to that. Get the ball out of his hands, let him go to work and operate. And doesn't mean anything. It might have been one of those things that when you're holding the number 1 pick, you're trying to entice conversation and people to get up. But Brian Callahan put it out there. And I thought it was an interesting thought. When we think about quarterbacks and the things that are necessary, it always comes down to decision-making, accuracy, and ball placement. And he was really raving about Shadur Sanders' things, and he made those loose comparisons to Joe Burrow, which I think is a very interesting thing to just kind of put in our back pocket as we get ready to watch him throw potentially at the combine.
Yeah, I think you kind of squint and you can see that. The anticipation accuracy part, 1,000%. Like Shadur, that's what he does really, really well. He is, especially when he's clean in the pocket, feet in the ground, anticipation, accuracy, outstanding, which, as you mentioned, are key elements to playing the position. Now, he's smaller than Burrow. I don't think he's as twitchy as Burrow.
He's
in terms
definitely
of
not
his
as athletic
movement.
as Burrow.
No.
He doesn't
So
have
that's
what
where the
Burrow.
difference is.
Yeah, because Burrow was all-state high school basketball player. You
Yeah.
see the athleticism go out. You also see the basketball skills come out when he's distributing the ball. He likes to go empty. He is a pass-first point guard. He gets into his playmakers and let them go to work. Not quite as quick or as distinct when it comes to Shedeur. I just thought it was interesting when we talk about talent, because everyone is going to have the conversation. Hey, Cam Ward's tools are off the charts. The tools are legit. They're real. The decision making is more of a gunslinger than someone that's going to kind of play and manage the game, maybe the way that you want consistently. But how much are you willing to bank on being able to refine that and harness that versus someone who doesn't have the arm talent, but maybe has the decision making and the anticipation and timing that you want in the offense?
Yeah, and that's a debate that's going to take place in the draft room. Is can we rein in Cam Ward a little bit and still get the benefits, reap the rewards of all the arm talent and the the suddenness and the way that he can make some special things happen? Can we rein that in? Or then on Shedeur's side, well, can we get him a little stronger? Can we? It's like that's the conversation that's going to be going.
Yeah, and another thing that's going to be going, because we haven't had the conversation, but I guess we can say this, like Jackson Dart had been in the building, so we had a chance to talk to him and those things. And there's been a lot of conversation about QB2, QB3, Jackson Dart, or whoever, the field, because everyone has always talked about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, but we've been in this long enough to know, who's the dark horse that we're not paying attention to?
Yeah.
The one that can get into the conversation. So studying Jackson Dart, you were there at the Senior Bowl. He is intriguing. Talking to Jackson Dart, the intrigue grows. What was your take on what he did down in Mobile, and how does he just kind of loosely factor into the conversation as we're talking about quarterbacks in his class?
I would say it was a solid week. He got a little bit better every day. I didn't come out of that with a hot or cold take on it. I didn't come out of there saying, man, he lit it up like we've seen, a couple guys light it up. And I didn't come out of there saying, man, he really hurt himself with the way he's performed. I just thought he got a little bit better every week. He's big, he's sturdy. He can move around. He moved around the game, had a rushing touchdown, something he's done a lot there at Ole Miss, and everybody seemed to enjoy their time with him. Like we enjoyed, getting a chance to visit with him. He's a really good dude. So I was doing an interview the other day with the Seattle radio, and like that name's in discussion there. They're picking 18. Now he's my 41st player, but again, in this draft, I don't know there's much difference between 18 and 50, to be honest with you. I got the same, like our grade system is like a 6.3. I've got 6.3s basically starting at around that range, and it goes all the way in the 50s. So it's just, you're stacking them however you prefer them, but grade wise, talent wise, they're all in one big pile together. So that's why I think you're going to see one of these other quarterbacks is going to emerge. You're right. It's going to be him. Or it's going to be, Will Howard's got some sponsors for the way he finished up, winning a national championship. Milrow's got some loud tools, but he was all over the place down there at the Senior Bowl. Dylan Gabriel is everybody's like, oh, well, is he going to get drafted? I'm like, guys, like if you put him in a dome, like you put him in the NFC South, he's not that much different than Tua. Like you can see a lot of similarities there. I know if I was Miami and if he was hanging around there in the middle rounds, shoot, I'd take him just as my Tua insurance because I don't have to change anything with my offense.
Yeah, no, look, man, beauty is always in the eye of the beholder. And when you're talking about quarterbacks and the number of teams that need quarterbacks and the number of teams that are going to be boxed out when it comes to free agency, those guys are going to be in the conversation maybe a little sooner than many people think. And when you're talking about like the next tier of quarterbacks, right? Like if we just say that Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are in a different tier, but like those guys vying for 3 or maybe even 2, some names are going to come up. And Jackson Dart, to me, I wouldn't say it's the safest, but he's the most logical that would come up. And the reason why I would say is like he goes from SC to Ole Miss. And even though the system is not a pro-style system, it marries a bunch of things that we see on Sundays. You think about the level of experience. You think about I think now we are all looking for the guy who's had to kind of go through some stuff to get to the other side. He has some of that. And to me, He's not as big of a project as Jalen Milroe could be in certain offenses. So to me, he's kind of like a natural and logical fit as the third or whatever. Will Howard certainly got hot down the stretch, but man, I still have like the Michigan game where he didn't play great in that hanging. Like there are going to be people that try and push Cal McCord into the thing, but then I'm going to have the whole year of Ohio State, the last year where they pushed him out. He goes to Syracuse. So there are going to be things on every quarterback, even the Ward and Shedeur. So it's going to be fascinating to have the conversations as we get into the combine and then the workouts. And then as what I would say is a bad thing, when group think tank takes over, who is going to be able to stand on conviction and say, hey, man, I feel really good about this quarterback and we can build something out for him to thrive in. Because I still remember there weren't a whole lot of people that were hot on Bo Nix. And then Bo Nix gets into the league and everyone's like, oh, man, Bo Nix can play. I'm like, yeah, for everybody. It's so many factors that go with whether a guy can succeed or fail in the league.
Yep, that's going to be part of the discussion here for the next several months as we get towards the draft. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We will have a short one. We got a short pod coming your way tomorrow as we head towards Super Bowl Sunday, and we'll have all the recap stuff for you beginning early next week as we full-on transition into the offseason, draft, free agency, all that good stuff. So appreciate you guys hanging with us. We'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.